I hadn't heard someone knock on my apartment door in weeks. Definitely not at 4 in the morning. Definitely not with the kind of frantic, uneven rhythm that made my stomach drop before I was even fully awake. My building in Brooklyn was quiet at that hour, almost eerily so, the kind of silence you only get in the dead of night, when the world hasn't decided whether it should breathe again or not. I stumbled out of bed, still half asleep, my oversized t-shirt falling off one shoulder as I shoved my glasses on and padded toward the door, unsure whether I was dreaming or about to be murdered. Jordan, the voice was faint, strained, and unmistakably familiar. For a moment, my brain froze, my hand hovering over the doorknob as my pulse surged with a violent mix of anger, dread, and something I refused to name.
Cassandra Blackwell.
The woman who had destroyed my life. The woman whose signature had been on the termination letter that ended my career, my apartment in Manhattan, my entire sense of direction. The woman who had dismissed me, my work, my dedication, 3 years of my life, with a cold smile and 5 minutes of polished corporate cruelty. This must be a nightmare, I whispered to myself. But when I opened the door, the nightmare didn't dissolve. It solidified. Cass stood in the hallway drenched in rain, her dark blazer soaked and clinging to her body, her hair plastered to her face, droplets sliding down her jaw. And her right eye, was swollen, purple, nearly shut. There was a small cut on her lip, a bruise forming along her cheekbone. Cassandra Blackwell, the untouchable CEO, the woman who ruled boardrooms with an iron gaze and a voice sharp enough to slit throats, looked fragile,
Human.
hurt. Jordan, she breathed, and the sound of my name on her lips almost knocked the wind out of me. Her voice was raw, trembling around the edges in a way I had never heard. Please, I need your help. For a full 5 seconds, I was convinced this was some elaborate hallucination brought on by freelance exhaustion and too much instant ramen. But no hallucination would have that smell, rain, cold, fear. No hallucination would be gripping the doorframe to stay upright. Are you kidding me? I snapped, finally finding my voice. You fire me, ruin my entire life, and then you show up at my door like some stray cat looking for shelter? She flinched. Cassandra Blackwell flinched. I know, she whispered. I know what I did to you. I know I'm the last person you want to see, but I didn't have anywhere else to go. Good. I spat. Try a hotel, or a hospital, or literally anyone who hasn't fantasized about throwing a drink in your face, daily. She wobbled, her balance faltering, and only then did I notice the way she was clutching her side, the wetness on her coat that wasn't from rain alone.
Blood.
My breath stopped. Cass, I said, my voice cracking despite my best effort to stay angry, stay cold, stay rational. What the hell happened to you? I can't tell you everything. Not here. Not while the hallway is exposed. She swallowed hard, her throat working visibly. Please, Jordan. I just need a place to stay for a few days. I'll pay you. I'll pay you whatever you want. I can't keep running. Running. Cassandra Blackwell. The woman whose shoes probably cost more than my rent. Running. I hated that something in me softened, even just for a second. I hated that I remembered how she used to walk into a room like she owned the air itself, how impossible it was to look away from her even when she was ruining everything. I hated that seeing her like this made my chest ache instead of giving me the satisfaction I should have felt. You look terrible, I muttered. Is that supposed to convince me? No, she said quietly. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm just asking. A simple sentence. But there was something behind it, something desperate. Something honest. Something that sounded like the truth. Jesus Christ. I rubbed my hands over my face.
Fine.
Whatever. Get inside before my neighbors think I'm harboring a criminal. She lowered her gaze. I might actually be. Fantastic. She stepped inside, shivering, dripping water onto my hardwood floor, and for a moment, the smallness of my apartment made everything feel too intimate. Too close. Cassandra wasn't meant to exist in places like this. She belonged in Manhattan penthouses and glass offices and places where the world bent itself around her. Sit, I said, pointing to the tiny couch. She obeyed, without her usual flair, without the commanding presence that used to fill entire conference rooms. She winced as she sat, pain tightening her mouth. Do you have a first aid kit? Do I look like I run an underground clinic? Jordan, please. The please hit harder than it should have. I grabbed the beat-up first aid kit from under my sink and set it on the coffee table before crossing my arms and staring at her. You're going to tell me what's going on, I demanded. All of it. No corporate bullshit. She took a shaky breath. I will, but not yet. You need to know that the people after me, they're dangerous. Really dangerous. And I didn't know who I could trust. So you came to the woman whose life you ruined? Yes, she whispered. Because you're the only person who has every reason to never help me. Which means you're the only one I know won't be pretending. Her logic punched me right in the ribs.
Hard.
I knelt in front of her before I even realized I was moving, tilting her face gently to examine the bruising. Her skin was cold beneath my fingertips. She sucked in a breath, not from pain, but something else. Something dangerously close to awareness. Hold still, I murmured. Her eyes met mine, blue, stormy, full of something raw, and suddenly the air between us felt electrified. Jordan, she breathed, my name sounding like something she wasn't allowed to say. My breath hitched.
No.
Absolutely not. I jerked my hand away. Don't look at me like that, I snapped, standing quickly. This isn't whatever this is. It isn't happening. Something flickered in her expression. Regret. Disappointment. Or maybe I imagined it. Thank you, she said softly, for letting me in. Don't thank me, I muttered. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because apparently I have no self-preservation instincts. But even as I said it, I couldn't shake the truth settling in my bones. Cass wasn't just the woman who had ruined my life. She was something else. Something I wasn't ready to face yet. And as the storm raged outside, I had the terrifying sense that letting her in had just changed everything. The rain kept battering the fire escape outside like someone throwing handfuls of gravel at the metal, and the tiny apartment felt even smaller with Cassandra Blackwell sitting injured on my couch, dripping rainwater and danger into every corner of the room. I stood over her, arms crossed, pretending I wasn't affected by how fragile she looked, by how the woman who once commanded entire floors of skyscrapers now looked like she was barely holding herself together. I grabbed a towel and tossed it toward her. She missed it. Cassandra Blackwell didn't miss things. She didn't stumble. She didn't bleed. She wasn't supposed to be here. I can handle it, she muttered, reaching for the towel with a shaky breath, but her hand trembled so hard she almost dropped it again. Before I knew what I was doing, I was kneeling in front of her, pulling the towel from her fingers and patting her hair dry with a gentleness I didn't even recognize as mine. She froze, eyes locked on mine, her breath catching just enough for me to notice. Her lips parted slightly, just barely, but enough to send a pulse of heat down my spine that I refused to acknowledge. Hold still, I murmured again, the same words from earlier slipping out unintentionally.
She did.
She held so still it was like she was afraid any movement might shatter whatever fragile thing was forming in the quiet between us. I swallowed hard, focusing on the bruise near her eye. It was ugly, dark, swollen in a way that must have hurt like hell.
Who did this?
I asked, my voice low, tight with anger I didn't want her to hear. She hesitated. Jordan, you don't want to be involved. Oh, trust me, I don't, I snapped, pulling back slightly. But it seems like I already am. So, who hit you? She looked away, jaw tightening, her breath fogging slightly in the cold of the apartment. I'd forgotten to turn the heat on earlier, and now the room felt charged, cold air mixing with the warmth of her breath. Someone who works for a man I trusted, she finally said. A man who has ways of dealing with people who get in his way. And you got in his way? I didn't mean to. She winced, lifting a hand to her ribs. But I found something I wasn't supposed to. And now they think I'm a liability. So, they beat you? I hissed. Cass, this is… I know, she whispered. It's worse than I thought. Her voice cracked on the last word, and it startled me more than anything else. Cassandra Blackwell didn't crack. She was the woman who fired people while drinking espresso, who shut down emotional displays with nothing but a raised eyebrow. She wasn't supposed to have a voice that sounded like it was unraveling thread by thread. Something deep inside me twisted. I reached out before I could stop myself, tilting her chin gently to the side, examining the bruise more closely. She inhaled sharply, again not from pain, but from the sudden closeness, the space between us shrinking until the air felt heavy and electric. "You should ice this," I said softly, my thumb brushing a small smear of dried blood near her temple. Her pulse fluttered beneath my touch. Jordan, my name again, said like something forbidden, like something she wasn't sure she deserved to say. I pulled my hand away with a force stronger than necessary, standing abruptly. "I'm getting the ice." Her gaze followed me across the room, a quiet intensity in her eyes that made it hard to breathe. I busied myself with the freezer, digging through the frostbitten chaos until I found a half-melted bag of peas. When I turned back to her, she was watching me the way someone watches a fire, careful, mesmerized, afraid of getting burned but unable to look away. "Here," I said, handing her the peas. She lifted them gingerly to her face and let out a soft, strained exhale. I tried to ignore how vulnerable she looked like that. I tried even harder to ignore how much it affected me. "You should rest." "I can't," she said immediately, panic flickering in her eyes. "If I fall asleep, I won't hear if they come. No one knows you're here." "That's what you think," she murmured darkly. "You don't know these people, Jordan. They find things. They find people." "Well, they haven't found you yet," I said, forcing confidence into my voice. "And they're sure as hell not getting through my deadbolt." She almost smiled, almost a tiny twitch at the corner of her mouth that disappeared as quickly as it formed. "You shouldn't be in this," she said quietly. "I shouldn't have dragged you into something this dangerous." "Dragged me?" I barked a humorless laugh. "You showed up bleeding at my door at 4 a.m. The dragging already happened." Her eyes fell to her lap, her fingers tightening slightly around the bag of peas. "I didn't know where else to go." "Good," I muttered. "I'd rather be your last choice." "You were my only choice," she said, so quietly I barely heard it. The words hit harder than I wanted them to. I sat down across from her, the coffee table separating us like a fragile border neither of us dared cross. But the air refused to behave like we were far apart. It stretched between us, thick, warm, alive. She shifted, wincing as the motion pulled at her ribs. "Lift your shirt," I said before thinking. Her eyes widened in surprise. "What?" "Your ribs," I clarified quickly, feeling my face heat. "I need to check if they're broken." She hesitated, her gaze flickering to mine in a way that felt like a question, one I didn't have an answer to. Then, slowly, carefully, she lifted the hem of her soaked blouse. A bruise blossomed across her side, deep and ugly, purple mixing with red in an angry smear. My breath caught. I had seen Cass command rooms, intimidate executives, shut down entire teams with one decision, but I had never seen her like this. I reached out gingerly, my fingers hovering inches from her skin. "Does it hurt here?" I asked, touching lightly near the bruise. Her breath hitched again. "Yes, but not just from the injury." I froze. She looked at me then, really looked. Her eyes softened, the ice in them melting into something far more dangerous. Attraction. Vulnerability. Want. I jerked my hand back like her skin was fire. "It's probably not broken," I said quickly. "Just bruised. You'll live." A faint smile touched her lips. "Good to know you're invested in that." Hey, if you're enjoying this story, go ahead and drop a like to help us grow even more. And let me know in the comments, on a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story so far? Your feedback makes all the difference. "I'm not invested," I snapped. "I'm just responsible. Because apparently that's who I am now." She tilted her head, studying me with a quiet intensity that made my chest tighten. "You always were," she said softly. That's why it was so easy to choose you. Choose me? I echoed. To fire. Her expression shifted. Guilt, regret, something deeper flickering in her eyes. That's not what I meant. But she didn't elaborate. Not yet. Instead, she sank back into the couch, exhaustion washing over her like a wave. For a moment, her eyes fluttered closed. For a moment, she looked peaceful.
Safe. Human.
I hated that I cared. I hated that the quiet, broken version of Cassandra Blackwell was somehow more dangerous to me than the ruthless CEO who destroyed my life. I pulled a blanket from the closet and draped it over her shoulders. Her eyes opened slowly, meeting mine with a softness that nearly undid me. Jordan, thank you. I swallowed hard. Don't make a habit of it. She let out a small breathy laugh, her first real smile flickering briefly before exhaustion dragged her down. Within minutes, her breathing deepened, her body relaxing into the couch. She'd fallen asleep, vulnerable, in my apartment, trusting me. And I realized with a jolt of fear and something far more treacherous that I wasn't just involved. I was entangled.
Deeply.
Dangerously. Irrevocably. I didn't sleep. Not really. I drifted for maybe 5 minutes at a time, the kind of shallow, restless dozing that barely qualifies as rest, the kind where your mind stays half awake scanning for threats your eyes can't see. Every time the radiator groaned or a car splashed through a puddle outside, my body jolted, instinctively listening for footsteps on the stairs, for hands at the door, for anything that might confirm that Cassandra Blackwell hadn't been exaggerating about the danger. Around 3 in the morning, the apartment fell into an unnerving silence, the kind that presses against your skin like static. Cass lay curled under the blanket on my couch, her breathing steady but strained, her face still swollen, her body occasionally flinching as if reacting to something in her sleep. I sat at the tiny kitchen table pretending to work on a freelance design draft while my eyes kept drifting back to her, watching her chest rise and fall, watching the way her fingers twitched, watching her exist in a space she had never belonged to before tonight. And then, without warning, she gasped. Not a soft gasp, a violent one. The kind that tears itself out of your lungs like something drowning. Her whole body jerked upright, and she clutched the blanket like she was falling, eyes wide, unfocused, seeing something that wasn't in my apartment. No, please don't. Her voice cracked on the last word, and a cold stab of fear went down my spine. I shot to my feet. Cass. She didn't hear me. Or she didn't recognize me. Her breathing was erratic, the gasping kind of breaths people take when they're trapped between sleep and memory. Her hands scrambled against the couch cushions, as if looking for something to defend herself with. Cass, I said louder, moving closer, my heart thudding. It's Jordan. You're safe. Her head whipped toward me, but she didn't really see me. Her eyes were wide with terror, pupils blown wide, her whole body trembling under the blanket. For the first time since I'd known her, Cassandra Blackwell didn't look like a CEO. She didn't look like someone who controlled everything around her. She looked terrified, human, breakable. Jordan, she whispered, voice thin and fragile as glass.
Yes.
Yes, it's me. I lowered myself to the edge of the couch slowly, hands raised the way you would with a frightened animal. You're safe. Nobody's here. She blinked hard, like she was trying to reorient herself, her breathing still sharp and fast. I thought, her voice cut off. She looked down at her hands, realizing they were shaking. I'm sorry. Don't apologize, I said firmly. Just breathe. But she couldn't, or wouldn't. I hesitated for half a second, then reached out, very gently, and placed my hand over hers. Her fingers instantly curled around mine like they were searching for something solid. The contact hit me hard, electricity snapping through me so fast I almost pulled away, but she held on, grip tightening like I was the only thing tethering her to reality. Jordan, she whispered again, voice barely audible. I thought they found me. They didn't, I said softly. You're here. You're safe. She closed her eyes tightly, as if trying to force the nightmare out of her mind. Her shoulders trembled under the blanket. Without thinking, without letting myself think, I shifted closer, slipping my arm around her shoulders. She leaned into me instantly. Not cautiously, not reluctantly, instinctively, like she had been waiting to collapse into someone's arms for far longer than tonight. Her forehead came to rest near my shoulder, her hair brushing against my jaw. Her breathing slowly steadied, warm and shaky against my neck. I felt her ribs expand and contract under my arm, felt the way her fingers dug into my shirt, felt the weight of her against me. A weight that should have felt wrong, but didn't. It felt terrifyingly right. "I'm sorry," she whispered again, her voice muffled. "You didn't sign up for this." "Cass," I murmured. "You're not in a boardroom. You don't have to perform for me." She froze. The air thickened instantly. And then she whispered, so quietly it felt like a confession, "I don't know how not to." My breath caught. I hadn't expected honesty. Not from her.
Not like that.
She stayed pressed against me, her body fitting against mine too well for someone I was supposed to hate. When she finally lifted her head, her face was inches from mine. Her eyes, still swollen, still bruised, looked impossibly open. All the walls she usually kept up torn down by exhaustion and fear, and something else, she wasn't hiding fast enough. "You didn't deserve what happened," she whispered. The words hit me harder than any bruise on her body must have hit her. "You didn't deserve any of it." My breath faltered. "Then why did you do it?" She swallowed, her gaze flickering to my lips for a fraction of a second she probably didn't intend for me to notice. Then her eyes met mine again, and something in her expression cracked. "Because I was trying to prove something." "To who?"
To myself, she said.
"To the board. To everyone watching me. When I became CEO, I was the youngest woman the company had ever put in that position. Everyone was waiting for me to fail. I was desperate to show them I could be ruthless enough, detached enough, cold enough." "So you ruined my career to impress people?" "I ruined your career," she said softly, "because your department was the only one I couldn't justify keeping without making myself look weak." Her voice shook. "And because you intimidated me." I blinked. "What?" She looked away, jaw tense. "You were everything I wasn't. Creative. Genuine. People loved you. You walked into rooms and made ideas grow. Every time I looked at your work, I felt like an imposter in my own title." I stared at her, stunned. She continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "So, I did the cowardly thing. I cut you out instead of admitting how much I respected you." Instead of admitting, her words died. A silence stretched between us, thick, suffocating, charged. "Instead of admitting what?" I asked, my voice near a whisper. Her eyes met mine again, and for a moment, the entire room shifted. The rain outside faded. The apartment disappeared. There was only her.
Bruised.
Vulnerable. Looking at me like she didn't know how to stop. "Instead of admitting that you got under my skin from the moment I met you," she breathed. The world stopped. She realized what she'd said a half-second too late. Panic flashed across her face, and she pulled back abruptly, her hand slipping from mine. "I shouldn't have said that," she said quickly. "Forget I did." "Cass, please," she whispered, shaking her head. "I can't, not right now." I didn't reach for her again. I just watched her, watched the way she held her ribs, the way she stared at the floor like it held the map to her survival, the way her facade was slipping faster than she could rebuild it. "I don't trust you," I said quietly. She looked up, pain flickering in her eyes. "I know, but I don't hate you as much as I should." Her breath caught, and for a moment, for a dangerous, reckless moment, something hopeful flickered in her expression. Something tender. Something that felt like the beginning of a fall neither of us were ready for. "Get some rest," I whispered, breaking the moment before it could grow into something impossible to undo. She nodded slowly, exhaustion washing over her features again. She lowered herself back onto the couch. But just before she closed her eyes, she said, barely audible, "Thank you for waking me up, Jordan." She didn't say it, but I heard the rest anyway. "Thank you for seeing me." And I hated, absolutely hated, how badly I wanted to keep seeing her. Dawn crept into the apartment slowly, a pale, reluctant light filtering through the thin curtains and settling over everything like a truth none of us were ready to face. I hadn't slept, again, but this time it wasn't fear keeping me awake. It was the memory of Cass against me, the sound of her voice whispering confessions she didn't mean to say out loud, the way she had looked at me afterward like she'd ripped open her own armor and didn't know how to put it back. She lay on the couch exactly where she had fallen asleep, her face softer in the early light, her features no longer sharpened into the cold precision she used to wear like a crown but smoothed with exhaustion and something painfully human. I tried to convince myself I was only watching her to make sure she didn't stop breathing or something equally dramatic, but the truth pressed deeper than that. I was watching her because it was impossible not to. Eventually she stirred, her lashes fluttering as though she were wrestling with the idea of waking up in a place so far beneath the world she usually walked in. When her eyes finally opened, confusion flickered for a second, replaced quickly by a guarded awareness. Then she saw me, saw that I had been watching her. A faint pink touched her cheeks, so faint I almost missed it, but not quite. "You didn't sleep," she said softly, her voice throaty from rest. "I slept enough. You look like you've been hit by a bus." "And you look like the bus," I shot back, mostly out of instinct. She actually smiled, an exhausted, fleeting curve of her lips that made something warm jolt inside my chest. But then her expression shifted, her eyes clouding as reality returned. She sat up too fast, wincing and clutching her ribs. "Careful," I said, stepping forward on reflex. She stilled, her eyes darting to mine, something complicated flickering there, something like recognition, something like fear of what last night meant. But she didn't pull away when my hand hovered near her elbow, didn't move when I steadied her, didn't hide the way her breath caught at the contact. "I'm fine," she murmured, even though she clearly wasn't. "Sure," I said. "And I'm a billionaire with a penthouse in the sky." She let out a small exhale, something close to a laugh, but not quite reaching the surface. She ran a hand through her messy hair, her fingers trembling slightly. "Last night," she began, then trailed off, shaking her head. "Forget it." "I'm not going to forget it," I said before I could stop myself. Her gaze snapped to mine, startled. The air thickened instantly. "Jordan," she whispered, but didn't finish. Couldn't finish. Not when the apartment felt too quiet. Not when the words she'd nearly said the night before still hung between us like a charged wire waiting for someone to touch it. She broke eye contact first, looking away sharply as if the sunlight itself had become too exposing. "We need to talk about what happens next," she said abruptly, her tone reverting to something that tried very hard to be businesslike. "Next?" I asked. "Next as in what? You turn my apartment into a panic room? You call a cab back to your penthouse? You explain why the hell people want you dead?" She flinched at the last question. "Jordan, don't Jordan me. I let you in. I patched you up. You owe me answers." She held my gaze then, and for the first time since the night she'd fired me, she didn't have a wall behind her eyes. She didn't have the CEO armor. She only had the truth, and the truth looked terrifying. "It's not safe for me anywhere," she said quietly. "But your apartment, they wouldn't expect me here. Not with you." I blinked, stunned by the weight of her words. "Because I'm insignificant?" "No," she said quickly, urgently. "Because I hurt you. Because no one in their right mind would think you'd help the person who wrecked your life." I swallowed, her honesty cutting deeper than I expected. "Right. But they will look," she continued. "They'll try to track my cards, my phone. Everything." She paused. "Which means I need to stay here. At least for now." "For how long?" She hesitated. "A few days. Maybe a week." A week. A full week with Cassandra Blackwell in my apartment. A week of this tension crawling under my skin. A week of her bruised face and her quiet confessions and the way she kept looking at me like she didn't know how to stop. "This is insane," I whispered. "I know." She rubbed her arms, suddenly looking smaller. "But I don't have a choice." Something stung in my chest at that, at the way she said it, at the way her voice cracked just slightly, like the idea of depending on someone was a wound it wasn't used to being touched. Fine, I said finally. But you're not stepping outside. At all. You understand. She nodded. And if someone knocks on the door, I won't move. Good. We held each other's gaze for a moment, too long, too heavily, until she looked away again. I should shower, she murmured. The image that flashed into my mind at those words was instant and unwelcome. Her wet skin, the line of her collarbone, the bruise along her ribs, the vulnerable way she'd leaned into me last night. Heat shot through my body, and I turned away sharply. Sure, I muttered. Bathrooms down the hall. She stood, slowly, carefully. But just as she passed me, she paused. Her voice was low, almost uncertain. Jordan, thank you. For staying awake. For being here. I didn't trust myself to look at her. Just go shower before you smell worse than last night. She let out a breath that might have been a laugh, soft and real, before stepping into the bathroom and closing the door behind her. The moment the water turned on, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding since dawn. I pressed both hands to my face. This was bad. Very, very bad. Because the more time she spent here, the more the lines blurred. And the more they blurred, the harder it became to remember why I should hate her. The bathroom door didn't open for a long time. When it finally did, a cloud of steam drifted into the hallway before Cass stepped out wearing a towel I definitely didn't remember picking out. White, fluffy, wrapped tightly around her body, dripping water down her legs in slow, maddening trails. I froze. Literally froze. Her hair was wet and pushed back, exposing the full lines of her face, the bruises sharper, her lips swollen from injury, but still distracting in ways that made my stomach twist. She caught my stare, hesitated, then bit her lip in something that looked dangerously close to shyness. My clothes are soaked. Right, I croaked. I can, give you something to wear. I practically fled to my bedroom, grabbing the first things my hands landed on, an oversized t-shirt and a pair of sweatpants. When I returned, she was still standing in the hallway, towel clutched with both hands as if she wasn't sure what to do next. I handed her the clothes. Our fingers brushed. A spark shot up my arm. Her breath hitched, barely audible, but unmistakable. Thank you, she whispered. She disappeared into the bathroom again. I paced the living room like a madwoman, trying to convince myself that this was fine, that I was fine, that none of this meant anything. When she reemerged, wearing my clothes, something inside me shifted again. The shirt hung off her shoulder slightly, exposing the faintest sliver of bruised skin. The pants were too big, tied tight at her waist. She looked softer, smaller, almost painfully human. They're comfortable, she said softly. Yeah, I managed. They look good. Silence stretched between us again, thick and tense, the kind that made it impossible to breathe normally. She opened her mouth to say something, but before she could, a loud vibration cut through the room. My phone, on the kitchen counter. I grabbed it, expecting a spam email or a notification from some app. Instead, the caller ID froze my blood. Blocked number. Cass went pale. Jordan, she whispered, stepping closer. Don't answer. It could be work, I said automatically. No, she said sharply. Jordan, listen to me. Blocked numbers at this hour are never. I answered anyway. Hello. At first, there was nothing. Just static. A faint hum. Then a voice.
Low. Calm. Too calm.
Tell Cassandra we know she's there. My entire body went cold. Wrong number, I said quickly, my voice unsteady. No, the voice replied. It's the right one. I hung up instantly, my hand shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Cass's face had drained of all color. Jordan, what did they say? They know you're here, I whispered. The room felt smaller. Tighter. Like the walls were shrinking around us. Terror flickered in Cass's eyes, the raw, unfiltered kind she'd tried to hide since she arrived. We need to figure out what they want, she said, her voice barely steady. We? I echoed. Cass, I'm not. You're already in it, she said softly. And I'm not going to let anything happen to you. The promise in her voice hit me harder than it should have. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't afraid because Cassandra Blackwell was here. I was afraid because I didn't want to lose her. The silence after the call was a living thing, thick and suffocating, pressing against the walls, pressing against my ribs, pressing against every rational thought I was trying desperately to hold on to. Cass stood frozen, her eyes wide, her fingers trembling slightly at her sides. For a woman who once delivered speeches to thousands without blinking, she looked terrifyingly close to breaking. Jordan, she whispered, her voice cracking in the middle like the word itself was too heavy to carry. They shouldn't have your number. I don't know how they got your number. That's what you're focusing on? I hissed, trying to keep my voice from shaking. They know you're here. Cass, they know you're in my apartment. She squeezed her eyes shut, inhaled sharply, then opened them again with a strange mix of determination and fear. We'll be okay, she said, though her tone betrayed she didn't fully believe it. I won't let them hurt you. I stared at her. This woman who had destroyed my life 6 months ago, was now standing barefoot in my living room, wearing my clothes, bruised and terrified, promising to protect me from people who wanted her dead. Reality hadn't just shifted, it had turned inside out. Enough, I said, trying to steady myself. You need to tell me what's going on. All of it. No more half-truths. She swallowed, her throat bobbing visibly. Jordan, no, I cut in sharply. You don't get to choose what I know anymore. You pulled me into this. You owe me the truth. She hesitated for a long time, staring at the floor as if trying to gather courage from the cracks in the hardwood. When she finally spoke, her voice was low but steady. I discovered something I wasn't meant to see. Something at Blackwell Industries. My breath caught. You mean your company? My family's company, she corrected softly. But it wasn't really mine. Not in the ways that matter. She wrapped her arms around herself, fingertips digging into the fabric of my t-shirt, like she needed to physically hold something together. When I became CEO, the board congratulated me with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. They said I was the future, the new face, a safe choice because I was young, ambitious, and easy to guide. A bitter laugh slipped out of her, humorless and sharp. But what they meant, Jordan? They meant they could use me. Use you how? I asked, dread curling low in my stomach. I was supposed to sign things without asking questions. Approve funding without digging too deep. Close deals without knowing where the money went. And you didn't? At first I did. She swallowed hard. But then I started noticing patterns. Missing funds. Shell companies. Departments that existed only on paper. Money being funneled into accounts that didn't belong to any legitimate project. Fraud, I said. Massive fraud, she whispered. But that wasn't the worst part. A shiver ran through her, goosebumps rising along her arms. Some of the money was going to people. Dangerous people.
People you don't say no to.
People the board had decided were worth doing business with. Cass, when I confronted one of the board members, he laughed. Told me it was adorable that I thought I had any power. Told me to sign the papers and smile for the cameras. My stomach twisted. And you didn't. No, she said. I started digging. I started collecting evidence. Her voice grew tight, the words scraping raw against her tongue. And they found out. The pieces clicked together painfully fast. And now they want to silence you. She nodded slowly. Permanently. Anger, hot, sharp, instinctive, flared inside me. Why didn't you go to the police? Because the police are in their pockets, she said. And the FBI wants more evidence than I could gather without getting killed. So you ran. I ran, she agreed softly. I ran with the one copy of proof I managed to save. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small flash drive.
Black. Plain.
Innocent looking. Terrifying. This, she whispered, could take them all down. I stared at it. At her. at everything that had suddenly become so much bigger than a ruined career. "And you're telling me this now?" "I had to," she said. "After the call. Jordan, you deserve to know exactly why you're in danger." I sank onto the chair behind me, rubbing my temples. "This is insane." "I know," she said quietly. "And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Jordan. I never meant to drag you into this nightmare." "But you did," I said, meeting her eyes. "You did drag me into it." She looked away, shoulders slumping under the weight of guilt. "If I could take it back, you can't," I interrupted. "But you can be honest. So keep going." She nodded slowly. "They caught me the first time I ran," she said softly. "That's how I got this." She gestured to her face, to the bruises that were darker now in the sunlight. "They told me I had one more chance to cooperate. One. And instead I ran again." Something in my chest tightened painfully. "And you came here because—" Her eyes lifted to mine.
Raw.
Vulnerable. Completely unguarded. "Because I didn't know where else to go. And because—" her voice softened to something barely audible. "Because you were the only person who had every reason not to help me. I knew that meant you wouldn't betray me." My breath hitched. "That's twisted logic." "It's the only logic I have left," she whispered. Silence pressed between us again, but it wasn't empty. It was charged, heavy, emotional. "Cass," I said quietly, "you ruined my life." She closed her eyes, pained. "I know. And now you're asking me to save yours." Her eyes opened again, and the look in them made my heartbeat stutter. "I'm not asking you to save me," she whispered. "I'm asking you not to let me face this alone." I should have said no. I should have screamed. I should have told her to get out, to run, to leave me out of this twisted corporate nightmare. But instead, I stepped closer. The air shifted. She looked up at me, startled, hopeful, terrified. My hand rose, slowly, almost without my permission, and brushed a strand of damp hair away from her cheek. Her breath caught, her eyes fluttering for a single, unguarded second. "Jordan," her voice wasn't steady anymore. It wasn't cool, or controlled, or clipped. It was a plea, a need, a confession wrapped in my name. I didn't know how it happened, if I'd moved first, or if she had, or if the gravity between us had finally pulled too hard, but suddenly we were standing so close that I could feel the heat of her breath against my lips. "This is a bad idea," I whispered. "The worst," she breathed. Her fingers brushed mine.
Just barely.
But the spark that shot through me was blinding. I should have stepped back. I didn't.
Neither did she.
For one suspended moment, the world shrank to just us, to the inches between our mouths, to the history we hadn't resolved, to the danger closing in around us. Her lips parted. My heartbeat faltered. And then, a violent crash shook the building. Something slammed against the fire escape outside, loud enough to send both of us stumbling back. Cass grabbed my arm, eyes wild. "They found us." My blood turned to ice. "Cass, what do we do?" She looked at the door, looked at the window,
Looked at me.
and then, with a steadiness I had never seen in her, she whispered, "We run." I didn't have time to think. The crash outside shook the entire building again, rattling the thin window frames and sending a tremor straight down my spine. Cass's hand tightened around my arm, her grip surprisingly strong for someone bruised, exhausted, and running on fear and adrenaline. Her eyes darted to the fire escape, then to the hallway, calculating, measuring, deciding in real time how to survive the next 60 seconds. "Jordan," she said, her voice low and urgent. "You need to trust me." "I'm trying," I breathed. "Try faster." Another metallic slam echoed from outside. Boots, heavy ones, landing hard on the fire escape ladder. They were climbing. They were seconds away from the window. Cass lunged for me, pulling me back from the glass. "We have to go."
Now.
She dragged me toward the front door, but I stopped her. "Cass, the hallway, what if they're already inside the building?" She froze. Just for a fraction of a second. But it was enough for me to see the truth in her face.
She didn't know.
She didn't have a plan. She was running on instinct, the same instinct that had gotten her out alive this far, but survival wasn't guaranteed now, not when I was with her, slowing her down, anchoring her to danger she would have outrun alone. And she knew it. Cass, I whispered, breath trembling. You should go without me. Her head snapped toward me so fast her wet hair whipped across her cheek. Absolutely not. Cass, I'm not leaving you. Her voice broke open on the last word, raw in a way that made something deep in my chest ache. Before I could respond, a shadow crossed the window. A gloved hand grabbed the metal railing. They were here. Cass grabbed my face between her hands, forcing me to look at her. Listen to me. There's a maintenance staircase at the end of the hallway. If we can reach it, we can get to the alley. From there we disappear. Disappear? I echoed. Cass, I'm not, Jordan. My name on her lips was sharper, more desperate, pulling the air from my lungs. I'm not letting them touch you. The crash of a boot hit the landing just outside the window. Too close. Shockingly close. Run, Cass whispered. And we did. She grabbed my hand, our fingers locking together with a force that felt like a vow, and we sprinted into the hallway. The old wooden boards creaked beneath us, the kind of sound that echoed louder than it had any right to. My heart pounded violently, my lungs burning, but Cass didn't let go. She stayed half a step ahead, shielding me with her body, even though she was injured, even though moving must have been agony. Just as we reached the end of the hallway, a door on the stairwell below crashed open. Voices shouted, male, angry, searching. Cass cursed under her breath. Back, back, they're coming up. She dragged me toward the opposite end, toward the old, supposedly sealed service door that led to the roof access. That door doesn't open, I cried. It does tonight. She threw her shoulder into it with a grunt of pain. It didn't budge. A second slam of boots echoed in the stairwell. Getting closer. I pressed my back against the wall, panic clawing at my throat. Cass, we're trapped. No, she growled through clenched teeth. We're not. She slammed her shoulder again. Pain shot across her bruised face, but the door gave an inch. Cass, you're hurt. I don't care. The door gave another inch. Voices shouted our floor number. Cass's breath came out short and sharp as she braced herself for one last shove.
Jordan, she gasped.
Stand behind me. I'm not letting you. Behind me. The command snapped out of her instinctively. CEO sharp, survival sharp, and even now, even in this moment, it hit something inside me I didn't want to acknowledge. I stepped behind her. She threw her entire weight into the door, and it flew open. Cold air slammed into us as she pulled me through, slamming the metal hatch closed behind us. The small rooftop landing was exposed to the rain, slick and narrow, the city stretching around us in a blur of neon and storm clouds. Cass leaned against the wall, breath ragged, clearly in pain. We can jump to the next building, she said, wiping rain from her face. It's only a 6-foot gap. Only? I squeaked. She looked at me then, through the rain, through the fear, through everything standing between us. I'll go first, then I'll catch you. The words were simple, but the way she said them, like she meant them, like she would never drop me, hit me like a punch. Cass, another crash sounded below. It was only a matter of time before they found the door. Cass stepped closer to me, inches from my face, her rain-soaked eyelashes sticking together, her breath warm, even in the icy air. Jordan, she whispered, I need you to breathe. I am breathing. Barely. She reached up, hesitation flickering only for a moment, and cupped my jaw in her hand. Her palm was warm despite the cold rain, her thumb brushing lightly against my cheek, grounding me, steadying me in a way my body recognized before my mind did. I won't let anything happen to you, she whispered. Not again. Not ever. My chest tightened, the storm inside me roaring louder than the storm around us. Cass, this is insane. Everything about you makes me insane, she said softly. It always has. My breath faltered. Something in her eyes, something raw, unguarded, unspoken, pulled me forward even as danger closed in around us. If we die tonight, I whispered, I'm going to haunt you. She laughed, actually laughed, breathless and broken and beautiful. If we die tonight, she murmured, I want my last mistake to be finally telling you the truth. The truth. I breathed. Her forehead touched mine. Rain dripped down our cheeks, mixing with the heat of our breath. That I never hated you, she whispered. I was afraid of you. My heartbeat stopped. Cass, I was afraid of how I looked at you, she confessed. Afraid of what you made me feel. Afraid of wanting someone who could break me. The door behind us rattled violently. But neither of us moved. Neither of us looked away. Cass, I whispered again. She closed her eyes, her voice barely a breath. Jordan, if this is the last second we get, she didn't finish. She didn't have to. Because I closed the distance.
Or she did.
Or maybe the moment pulled us together like gravity. But suddenly her lips were on mine, warm despite the cold, desperate despite the danger, soft and trembling and hungry all at once. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was the opposite. It was 6 months of resentment, 6 months of hurt, 6 months of tension exploding into something neither of us could hold back anymore. Her hand slid into my hair. My fingers fisted in her shirt. The cold rain soaked us, but the heat between us burned. She kissed me like she'd wanted to for months. I kissed her like I'd hated wanting her for months. The metal door below shook violently, someone shouting as they forced it open. We pulled apart, gasping, foreheads pressed together, breath mingling in frantic clouds. We have to go, she whispered, voice shaking for a very different reason now. Cass, I breathed, still dizzy from the kiss. Jump with me. She took my hand, held it tightly. Always. And we ran toward the edge of the roof. Together. The roof's edge rushed toward us faster than my mind could fully process, the rain blurring everything into streaks of silver and shadow. Cass didn't hesitate. She squeezed my hand once, hard, like a promise I could feel straight through my bones, then leapt across the gap with a confidence that made my breath catch. She landed on the opposite building with a soft grunt, her knees bending to absorb the impact. She turned instantly, eyes locked on mine through the downpour. Jordan, jump. Everything in me recoiled at the idea. I was not someone who jumped off buildings. I was someone who cried when my laptop crashed. But behind me, boots slammed against metal. The hatch had burst open. Shouts echoed across the rooftop. Jordan. Cass's voice cut through the storm like a lifeline. I won't let you fall. It was the only thing that made my feet move. I ran. My heart thundered. My breath stuck somewhere between terror and faith. And then I jumped. The world dropped out beneath me. For one impossible second, I was suspended in the cold night air, weightless, powerless, my body cutting through rain and wind. Panic surged up my throat, and then her hands were on me. Cass grabbed me mid-fall, arms locking around my waist, dragging me against her as we crashed onto the rooftop together. The impact jarred my bones, but Cass held me tightly, absorbing most of the weight. We rolled once on the slick surface, her arms still around me, the world spinning until we came to a stop with me lying half on top of her, her breath warm and ragged against my ear. See, she whispered, her voice trembling with adrenaline and something deeper. I told you I'd catch you. I exhaled shakily, pressing my forehead to her shoulder for just a moment, letting myself feel the truth of her warmth, her solidity, her presence. Cass, I breathed, the rain dripping down my face. You scared the hell out of me. Good, she whispered back. Because you terrify me too. A sound, sharp, metallic, snapped the moment apart. A gunshot. A bullet slammed into the ledge inches from where our heads had been. Cass's body yanked instantly into motion. She pushed me up, grabbed my hand again, and pulled me toward the stairwell door on the far end of the roof. We have to move. We sprinted, feet slipping on the wet concrete. Behind us, more voices poured over the roof. More footsteps. Another gunshot. The bullet ricocheted off a vent, sending sparks into the rain. They're shooting at us? I gasped. Yes, Cass said breathlessly. Welcome to my life. We reached the rusted metal door. She rammed into it with her good shoulder. Thank God, but it barely budged. She cursed under her breath, muscles trembling, rain streaming down her neck. Let me try, I said. No, she snapped. Your ribs. You're hurt more than I am. I shoved the door with everything I had. Nothing. Cass pressed her palm against the door, her breath quickening with panic. Jordan, move. I stepped aside, and she kicked the door at exactly the right angle, with exactly the right force. It flew open. We tumbled inside, slammed it shut, and bolted down the stairwell. The air smelled like mildew and rust, the kind of stale scent old buildings exhale when they've been abandoned by everyone except desperation. We dashed down 2 flights before Cass suddenly stopped and pulled me into the shadows of a landing, her chest heaving, her wet hair plastered to her face. We can't stay on open stairwells, she whispered. They'll expect that. We need somewhere unexpected. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing. Like what? She looked around, assessing, calculating, eyes flickering between instinct and exhaustion. Then she saw it, an old maintenance closet halfway down the next flight. She grabbed my wrist and pulled me toward it. In here. A closet? Seriously? Do you want to be shot? No, then get inside. The closet was tiny, maybe 4 square feet total, but the moment Cass shut the door behind us, plunging us into near darkness, the space shrank even more. Our bodies pressed together automatically. There was nowhere else to stand. The faint smell of dust and old paint filled the air, mixing with the scent of rain on her skin. My heart hammered against my ribs, loud enough I was sure she could hear it. Cass, I whispered, barely able to breathe in the cramped space. Her breath brushed my cheek, warm and shaky. I'm sorry, she murmured. I didn't want you in this. Too late, I whispered back. Silence. Heavy, electric, suffocating. I could feel every point where our bodies touched, her chest rising and falling against mine, her hands gripping my waist to steady herself, her forehead nearly brushing my temple. Jordan, she said softly, the darkness amplifying the intimacy of her voice. About the kiss. Heat shot through me. Don't. I have to, she whispered, because I thought I would never get the chance again. Her words hit like a blow. Cass, I shouldn't have done it then, she continued, her voice trembling. Not while we were in danger, not while everything was collapsing. It wasn't just you, I said before she could finish. She inhaled sharply. What? You weren't the only one who wanted it. The truth hung between us like a trembling wire. Cass shifted closer instinctively, her hands sliding at my waist, fingers curling gently into the fabric of my shirt as she pressed her forehead to mine. Her voice shook when she spoke. Jordan, if we make it out of this. Footsteps thundered down the stairwell outside. Multiple sets. Close. Very close. Cass's hand clamped over mine. She leaned in, her lips brushing my ear with barely their contact that sent shivers straight down my spine. Don't breathe, she whispered. The footsteps stopped right outside the closet door. My lungs froze. Cass pulled me tighter against her, pressing me into the wall with her body shielding mine completely. The footsteps moved again, slowly, methodically. Someone jiggled the handle. My heart exploded in my chest. Cass's arms tightened around me, her body curved protectively over mine, her breath trembling against my neck. The handle jiggled again. Then again. I felt Cass brace, preparing for the door to be kicked open, preparing to put herself between me and whoever was on the other side, preparing to die first if she had to. The metal creaked, and then the footsteps moved on. Slowly. Fading. Until finally, silence. Cass didn't loosen her grip. Not at first. She held me against her like she was afraid if she let go, I'd vanish. Finally, she exhaled. A broken, shaking sound. Jordan, she whispered. I thought. Me too. I breathed, unable to stop the tremor in my voice. Cass. She pulled back just enough to see my face in the faint sliver of light creeping under the door. Rainwater had dried on her cheeks, her hair a wild mess, her lips swollen from our kiss and stress. She looked at me with raw intensity, like she wasn't sure whether to apologize or kiss me again. So I made the choice for both of us. I grabbed her shirt and pulled her mouth back to mine. The kiss was different than before, slower, deeper, desperate in a quieter way, like a thank you whispered against skin. She melted into me instantly, one hand rising to cradle my jaw, the other sliding to the back of my neck as our bodies pressed together in the darkness. She kissed me like she needed air, and I was the only thing keeping her alive. I kissed her like I finally understood why it had always felt impossible to hate her completely. When she finally pulled back, breathless, she whispered against my lips, "We're getting out of this. You and me." "Cass, I won't lose you," she said, her voice breaking. "Not now." Something inside me cracked open at that. "Then we don't stay here," I whispered. "We move. Now." She nodded, forehead still pressed to mine. "Together?" "Together," I breathed. And when we slipped out of the closet, her hand found mine in the darkness, tight, certain, unshakable. The stairwell emptied into a narrow maintenance corridor that smelled of wet concrete and forgotten years. Cass kept my hand in hers as we moved through the dim passage, her pace quick but careful, her body positioned slightly in front of mine like she was ready to intercept a bullet if it came to that. Every few steps she glanced back at me, checking that I was still there, still breathing, still alive. We slipped out through a rusted service door into an alley choked with rainwater and flickering streetlights. The city was awake now, early morning traffic humming faintly in the distance, unaware of the storm unfolding in the shadows. Cass squeezed my hand once, then released it reluctantly. "Stay close," she murmured. "We need to move fast but not draw attention." "You mean like two soaked, terrified women running for their lives?" She shot me a quick, almost smile. "Something like that." We moved through the alley, keeping to the edges, slipping between dumpsters and fire escapes until we emerged onto a quieter residential street. Cass inhaled deeply, scanning the slow-moving cars and the blur of pedestrians emerging into the early morning drizzle. Her jaw tightened. "We need cover," she said. "Somewhere to lay low for a few hours before they track our trail here." "Do you have any place in mind?" "One," she said, "but it's risky." "Risky how?" "Risky as in it belongs to someone who owes me a favor, but might not be thrilled to see me." "Great," I muttered. "Love that for us." We walked another block, Cass maintaining a wary distance from every passing car, every shadow, every sound. She kept her hood up and her posture low, instinctively moving like someone who'd been hunted long before tonight. Finally, she stopped in front of an old laundromat with peeling paint and a buzzing fluorescent, open sign. "A laundromat?" I whispered. "Yes. This is your genius hideout." "Not exactly," she murmured. She led me around the side of the building, to a door marked employees only. She knocked twice, paused, then knocked again, an unmistakable pattern almost like a code. For a moment nothing happened. Then the door opened a crack. A woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and silver-streaked hair peeked out. Her gaze flicked from Cass's bruised face to her wet clothes to me. She sighed deeply. "Cassandra Blackwell," she said. I knew trouble would crawl back to me eventually. Cass didn't flinch. "Nora, I need a place to stay for a few hours." Nora's gaze sharpened. "And who's this?" "Jordan," I said before Cass could answer. I'm with her." Nora looked me up and down, taking in the soaked clothes, the fear I couldn't quite hide, the way Cass subtly shifted closer to me like she was ready to shield me at any moment. Nora's eyes softened almost imperceptibly. "You look like hell," Nora said to Cass. "And you look like you've been dragged through hell twice," she said to me. "Come in." She stepped aside. Cass nodded gratefully and guided me inside. The doorway opened into a small back room filled with old cardboard boxes, industrial detergent containers, and the steady hum of washing machines. Nora shut the door behind us and bolted it.
"Sit."
"Both of you." Cass obeyed, lowering herself slowly onto a crate, wincing as her bruised ribs pulled taut. I sat beside her, close enough that our arms brushed. Nora crossed her arms. "Explain."
Cass took a breath.
The board found out what I discovered. They're using their connections to track me down. They sent men after me. Armed. I heard gunshots, Nora said dryly. Let me guess, they weren't warning shots. Cass shook her head. They're trying to silence me. And now Jordan is caught in it too. Nora's gaze flicked to me, sympathy and concern warring in her expression. Kid, you sure you want to be tangled up in this? Before I could answer, Cass said sharply, she didn't choose to be. Her protectiveness startled me. Nora raised an eyebrow. Clearly. She disappeared into another room and returned with a first aid kit and 2 blankets. She handed one to me and placed the other over Cass's shoulders. Stay here. Don't talk to anyone. Don't go near the windows. I'll keep the front locked. She left, closing the door behind her. The small room fell back into silence, thick with unsaid words and leftover adrenaline. Cass pulled the blanket tighter around herself, exhaling shakily as she leaned her head back against the wall. The harsh yellow light highlighted the bruises on her face, the exhaustion dragging her features into something painfully vulnerable. Jordan, she said softly, eyes still closed, you should hate me more than ever right now. I don't, I whispered. Her eyes opened, locking onto mine instantly. You should, she insisted, voice cracking. I ruined everything. And now I've dragged you into something you can't walk away from. Cass, I said gently, I'm here because I chose to be, not because you forced me. She stared at me, breathing shallow, her expression torn between disbelief and something warmer, something almost hopeful. Why? She asked quietly. Why would you choose to help me after everything I did? I hesitated, the weight of her question settling over me. Because I saw you last night. All the walls gone. All the armor stripped away. And I realized I swallowed hard. You're not the monster I thought you were. She looked almost hurt. Jordan, and because I continued, my voice trembling despite my best effort to steady it, I saw how scared you were. How alone. How desperately you wanted someone to trust. Cass looked away, jaw tightening, emotion flickering painfully across her features. I didn't want it to be you, she whispered. Not because I don't trust you, but because I trust you too much. My breath caught. Cass, she met my gaze again, and something in her eyes was so raw it felt like looking directly into an open wound. I should have never fired you, she admitted. Not just because it was wrong, but because it hurt me too. I blinked. Hurt you. She nodded, swallowing. You were the one person I couldn't control. The one person whose opinion mattered when it shouldn't have. Every time you walked into a room, I felt exposed. So I pushed you away before I could fall for you. My heart slammed into my ribs. Cass, she shook her head, eyes shining with unshed tears that refused to fall. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know the truth. I was terrified of caring about you. The words hit me like a tidal wave. For a moment I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think past the magnitude of what she'd just confessed. Cass, I whispered, reaching out without thinking, my fingertips brushing her hand. She flinched, but not away.
Toward.
Her fingers curled around mine slowly, hesitantly, like she wasn't sure she had the right to touch me. Jordan, she said softly, voice shaking. Tell me to stop and I will. But if you don't, the air tightened painfully. If you don't, she whispered, I'm going to kiss you again. Heat shot through me. My pulse tripped. My voice barely worked. Cass, I breathed. Don't stop. She didn't hesitate. Her hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me toward her with a certainty that made my breath stutter. Her lips met mine, slow and searching this time, as if she was memorizing the shape of my mouth. The kiss deepened, my hands gripping her waist, her fingers threading through my hair as the rain-dampened warmth of her pressed into me. Every emotion she'd been hiding poured through that kiss. Fear, longing, regret, desire, something dangerously close to hope. When she finally pulled back, breathless, she rested her forehead against mine. I don't deserve you, she whispered. Maybe not, I replied softly. But you're here. Her lips trembled. And you're still holding my hand. I looked down. I hadn't even noticed our fingers had intertwined. I guess I am. She exhaled shakily. Jordan, if anything happened to you. Cass, I whispered, squeezing her hand. I'm not going anywhere. She closed her eyes, relief crashing over her like a wave. But before either of us could say another word, Nora burst into the room. We have a problem, she said, breathless. Someone just parked outside. Black SUV.
2 men.
They've been watching the shop. Cass went rigid. They found us. Nora nodded grimly. You need to leave.
Now.
My hand tightened instinctively around Cass's, and she held on just as tightly. Nora didn't need to repeat herself. The fear in her voice said everything. Cass reacted first. She rose from the crate in one swift movement that shouldn't have been possible for someone bruised and exhausted, her hand tightening around mine with a force that was almost painful. We're going out the back, Cass said, her voice low and razor-sharp.
Now.
Nora grabbed a set of keys from a hook on the wall. I'll stall them as long as I can. You head through the storage yard. There's a fence, but it's climbable. Nora, Cass began. Don't waste time thanking me, Nora cut in. Just stay alive. She shoved open a door at the back of the room. Cold air rushed inside. Cass pulled me forward, and we ran into the narrow, dimly lit storage yard cluttered with crates, broken dryers, and discarded metal frames. Rain dripped from rusted beams overhead, creating puddles that splashed under our feet as we sprinted between the debris. My lungs burned. My heart hammered. But Cass didn't slow down. Not once. Her grip on my hand anchored me in the chaos, pulling me forward even when my legs wanted to stop. We reached a tall chain-link fence topped with loops of curling barbed wire. My breath hitched. Cass, there, she said, nodding to a stack of metal pallets leaning against the fence. We climb. Climb? I echoed, voice cracking. Cass, I'm not. Jordan, she said, turning to face me, her eyes blazing with a mix of fear and determination. I will throw you over this fence if I have to. That's not reassuring. She stepped closer, her hand rising to cup the side of my face. My breath stuttered at the tenderness in her eyes, the desperation behind it. Please, she whispered. I can't lose you. That was all it took. I climbed. Cass boosted me up the unstable pile of pallets until I could grip the top of the fence. Rain made the metal slippery, but adrenaline made my fingers hold. I swung one leg over, then the other, landing on the other side in a shaky crouch. Jordan, Cass hissed. Drop down. I did, just as the back door of the laundromat burst open. 2 men stormed into the yard, their silhouettes huge in the gray morning light. Cass didn't hesitate. She scaled the pallets like a woman possessed, muscles straining, face contorted in pain as her bruised ribs protested every pull. One of the men shouted, There, the fence. Grab her. Cass, I screamed, reaching up uselessly. She didn't look down. She didn't slow. She launched herself over the fence and landed hard. Too hard. Her knees buckled and she collapsed forward, catching herself with her hands as a choked gasp tore from her throat. Cass. I dropped beside her, grabbing her arms. Are you okay? She nodded, breathless, but the tightness in her jaw told me everything. Run, she whispered. We have to run. We took off down the alley, the sound of metal scraping behind us as the men began climbing the fence after her. This way. Cass pulled me toward a busy street. Horns blared.
Cars streaked by.
Cass scanned rapidly, eyes darting, until she spotted a bus pulling into a stop. Without thinking, she dragged me toward it. Come on. We sprinted the last few feet. She shoved a few bills at the confused driver and pulled me inside just as the bus doors hissed closed. The men reached the alley mouth seconds later. Cass yanked me into a seat, her body hunched forward, breath ragged, hair dripping rainwater onto her borrowed shirt. I watched her chest rise and fall too quickly, the pain clearly hitting her harder now that adrenaline wasn't carrying her. Cass, I whispered, Your ribs. Not broken, she panted, just screaming at me. She pressed a hand gently to her side. I'll be fine. You're not fine, I said, scooting closer. You can barely breathe. Her eyes flicked to mine, shaken, but still steady with that stubborn fire. I'll breathe better once we're safe. Are we safe? She looked out the window. For now. For several minutes, the only sound was the rumble of the bus and the low murmur of morning commuters. Cass's hand found mine again, slowly, hesitantly, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to touch me after everything. I intertwined our fingers without hesitation. Her jaw softened as she exhaled shakily. Jordan, she said quietly, back there at the fence, if they had gotten to me, they didn't. I cut her off. Cass, they didn't. But if they had, she insisted, voice cracking, you need to know something. Cass, I would have stayed behind. My blood turned to ice. Don't you dare say that. It's true, she whispered. I would have distracted them so you could escape. Cass, I hissed, grabbing her arm. Don't you ever say that again. Jordan. No, my voice trembled. I'm not losing you. Something in her eyes shattered at that, like she'd been holding on by a thread and I had just tied a knot in it for her. Her hand lifted slowly, brushing a strand of wet hair from my forehead. Her fingertip traced lightly along my temple, sending a warm rush straight down my spine despite everything. You don't understand, she whispered. You matter more to me than. The bus suddenly slammed to a stop. People jolted forward, grabbing seats for balance. Cass instinctively pulled me into her side, shielding me as the driver cursed under his breath. Sorry, the driver shouted. Car blew a red light. Cass's arm was still around me. I didn't move.
Neither did she.
Her body was warm against mine, her breath brushing my cheek, the tension between us humming through the air like static. Jordan, she murmured. Look at me.
I did.
Slowly. And she looked back at me like nothing existed outside that bus. You matter to me, she whispered again, the words trembling. More than you should. My breath hitched. My heart thudded painfully. Cass. Her thumb brushed my lower lip, barely there, a ghost of a touch that made heat surge through me. If I lose you, she swallowed hard. I can't lose you. You won't, I whispered. Her eyes flickered with something raw, fear, longing, devotion, regret, all tangled together.
Then the spell broke.
She straightened abruptly. Next stop, she said, forcing her voice steady. We get off. When the bus stopped again, we slipped out into the busy morning crowd. Cass kept her head down, her hood up, scanning every direction with sharp, wary eyes. Where are we going? I asked. Somewhere we can rest, she murmured. Somewhere safe. And where is that? Her jaw tightened. Someone else I shouldn't trust, but we have no choice. We turned down a quieter street, passing brownstones and a few sleepy cafes, just opening for business. Cass's hand brushed mine occasionally as we walked, but she didn't take it again. Not until we turned a corner, and she suddenly stopped.
Here, she said.
A small townhouse sat tucked between two taller buildings, ivy climbing one side, a cracked stoop leading to the door. Cass hesitated, her breath unsteady. Are you sure? I whispered. She looked at me then, really looked, her walls trembling but still standing. No, she whispered, but I'm sure about you. Before I could respond, a glass bottle shattered behind us. Instinctively, Cass grabbed me, pulling me behind a parked car. They found us again, she whispered, panic slicing through her voice. Two men stepped into view at the end of the street. Recognition hit Cass instantly. It's them, she breathed. Jordan, run. But I didn't run. Not until she did. She grabbed my hand, her fingers locking with mine like a vow, and we sprinted together again, hearts pounding, breaths sharp, the world blurring around us. But halfway down the block, she stumbled, her ribs seizing with pain. I caught her instantly. Cass. I'm fine, she gasped, but her face was contorted with agony. Go. I'm not leaving you. Jordan, please. And oh. I snapped, tears burning my eyes. I'm not losing you either. She stared at me, eyes wide, emotions swirling violently behind them. Then, without warning, she surged forward and kissed me.
Hard.
Desperate. Terrified.
Alive.
It wasn't like the other kisses. It was messy, trembling, frantic, charged with fear of losing each other, charged with the echo of a truth we were both too scared to fully say. Her hands cupped my face. My hands wrapped around her waist. For a moment, just one moment, we forgot the danger. We forgot everything except the fact that we were still alive. And then, Hey, a voice roared from behind us. Cass tore her lips from mine. Run, she panted. And this time we ran together. We ran. Again. Our footsteps pounded the wet pavement in sync, splashing through puddles that exploded under our shoes as the gray morning blurred around us in streaks of rain, fear, and adrenaline. Cass didn't let go of my hand. Not even once. Even when her ribs seized, even when she stumbled, even when the sound of the men behind us grew louder, closer, viciously determined. Left, she gasped. We swerved down a narrow side street lined with brownstones and cracked sidewalks. A delivery truck blocked half the road, its engine idling loudly. Cass yanked me behind it, pressing us flat against the metal as the SUV tore past the intersection. My heart hammered so loudly, I could feel it in my teeth. Cass braced one arm against the truck, her other still gripping my hand tightly enough to hurt. Her breathing was shallow, ragged, edged with pain from her ribs. I pressed my free hand over hers instinctively. Cass, I whispered, you're hurt. We can't keep running like this. I'm fine, she lied, eyes burning fiercely. We just need to reach the townhouse. Whose townhouse? I asked, trying to catch my breath. She hesitated. A flicker of something conflicted crossed her bruised face. Someone I used to know. Someone you trust? Someone I trust more than most people, she said slowly, which still isn't saying much. Shouting echoed faintly in the distance. Cass stiffened, her grip tightening. We have to move.
Now.
We slipped back into the street, blending into a small group of pedestrians waiting at a crosswalk. Cass pulled her hood lower, keeping her head bowed as the light changed and the group crossed together. Every fiber of her body was tense, every step measured and controlled despite the pain radiating through her. I stayed close, too close, but she didn't seem to mind. Her shoulder brushed mine with every movement, grounding me in ways I didn't understand, not fully. Just a few more blocks, she murmured. We turned down a quiet street lined with tall trees dripping rain. At the far end stood the townhouse Cass had pointed out earlier. 3 stories. Dark red brick. Old, but sturdy. Lights off.
Curtains drawn.
Cass's hand started shaking the closer we got. Not from fear, but something else. Something heavier. Cass, I said softly, squeezing her hand. Who lives here?
She stopped.
Right in front of the stoop. Rain dripped from her hood, tracing slow lines down her bruised cheek. My sister. The world stilled. You never. I know, she whispered. I never told you. I haven't told anyone in years. She looked up at the townhouse like it was a ghost she wasn't ready to face. Her name is Evelyn. We haven't spoken since, her words cut off. Pain flashed across her features. Old pain, deep pain, the kind that doesn't fade even after years of burying it. Cass, later, she whispered, voice tight. I'll explain later. But she's the only person left who won't immediately turn me in. Before we could move, the unmistakable rumble of an engine echoed behind us. Slow, predatory, too close. Cass shoved me forward. Go. We climbed the stoop quickly. Cass raised her fist and banged on the door 3 times. Nothing. Rain pattered. The SUV engine buzzed closer. Cass knocked again, harder, more desperate. Evelyn. It's me. Open the door. Still nothing. Cass's breath hitched, her voice cracking. Evie, please. A shadow shifted behind the curtains. Then the door slammed open. The woman in the doorway was a little older than Cass, with the same piercing blue eyes but a softer face, tired and wary. Her gaze snapped from Cass to me to the SUV rounding the corner. Inside, Evelyn said immediately. She grabbed Cass's arm, pulled her across the threshold, and I followed. The door slammed shut behind us, just as headlights swept across the stoop. Evelyn locked 3 heavy bolts in rapid succession. The moment the last one clicked into place, Cass exhaled shakily and leaned her back against the wall like she finally allowed herself 1 second of weakness. Evelyn crossed her arms and glared at her. "What the hell did you do now?" Cass flinched, not from pain, but from something deeper, like the words cut her in a way bullets hadn't. "It's a long story," she murmured. "It always is with you." Evelyn shot back. Her gaze flicked to me. "Who are you?"
Jordan, I said.
Cass is. She dragged you into this mess too? Evelyn asked bluntly. "Figures." Cass straightened, bristling. "Evie, don't Evie me." Evelyn snapped. "You show up after 7 years, looking like you went 12 rounds at the brick wall, and you expect me to smile and offer tea?" Cass swallowed hard, pain flickering through her eyes. I didn't know where else to go. Evelyn's expression softened, but only slightly. "You always know where to go, Cass. You just hate asking for help." Cass looked away, eyes dull with regret. "I don't hate asking," she whispered. "I hate needing it." That silenced the room. I stepped closer to Cass without thinking, rubbing her arm gently. She closed her eyes for half a second, leaning into the touch before catching herself. Evelyn noticed. Her eyebrow lifted. "Well," she muttered, "that explains a lot." Cass glared. I blushed. Evelyn sighed, running a hand through her hair.
"Fine.
You can stay. But if trouble comes to my doorstep, it already has," Cass said quietly. "And I'm sorry. Something passed between the sisters then. Years of distance, years of hurt, years of love unspoken." Evelyn exhaled sharply. "Sit down before you fall down." Cass didn't argue. She moved to the sofa and lowered herself onto it with a wince. I sat beside her. Too close. Close enough for Evelyn to smirk knowingly. "So," Evelyn said, grabbing a first aid kit and kneeling in front of her sister. "Start talking." Cass hesitated, her gaze flicking to me. Evelyn noticed instantly. "She can stay," the older woman said dryly. "Not like she hasn't already been shot at with you." Cass nodded slowly. Then she told her everything. The fraud, the board, the threats, the evidence, the chase. Evelyn listened in silence, jaw tightening with every word. When Cass finished, Evelyn stood abruptly. "These people sound like they don't leave loose ends." Cass nodded grimly. Evelyn took a deep breath. "So, we protect you. Both of you." "Evie," Cass started, but Evelyn cut her off again. "Don't fight me. You did this alone long enough. Let someone else take a few hits for once." Cass blinked rapidly, startled, touched, unsure. I reached for her hand again, and she let me take it this time without hesitation. Evelyn saw it. She studied us for a long, evaluating moment. "So," she said slowly, "you finally told her?" Cass stiffened. "Hard." "Told me what?" I asked. Cass shot her sister a warning glare. "Evelyn." Evelyn shrugged. "Oh, come on. She's clearly not stupid." "Evie." "Fine." Evelyn held up her hands in surrender. "I won't say it." Cass relaxed barely. "I didn't." "Say what?" I pressed. Cass rubbed her forehead. "Not now, Jordan." "When?" I asked softly. "When we're not running for our lives?" "Yes," she whispered. "Exactly then." Evelyn watched us for a beat, then shook her head with a small, knowing smile. "You two are unbelievable." Cass was about to retort when a violent pounding rattled the front door. All 3 of us froze. Evelyn's face drained of color. "No," Cass whispered. "Not here." The pounding grew louder, more aggressive. My heart hammered wildly. Cass grabbed my hand, her grip fiercer than ever. "Jordan," she breathed, "stay close to me." I didn't hesitate. Always. The pounding at the door wasn't just loud. It was violent, deliberate, The kind of force that didn't belong to neighbors or delivery drivers or anyone with harmless intentions. It was the kind of pounding that promised someone on the other side wouldn't stop until they got in. Cass's hand tightened around mine instantly, her fingers trembling despite the steady look she forced onto her face. Evelyn snapped out of her shock first. "Basement," she hissed.
Now.
Cass pulled me toward the hallway, her grip firm but her breathing too shallow, her ribs protesting each movement. Evelyn swung open a narrow door beside the kitchen. A wooden staircase descended into darkness. "Go," she ordered. "Cass first." "Evie," Cass began, but Evelyn shoved her. "I'm not arguing. Go." Cass swallowed hard, then descended the stairs, pulling me behind her. The basement smelled like cement, dust, and the faint hint of turpentine. Boxes lined the walls, old furniture covered in white cloths, a single bulb hanging above. The air was cold enough to sting. Evelyn shut the door above us, but didn't lock it. Instead, she slipped into the shadows beside the stairs, gripping something metal, a wrench, maybe a crowbar. Cass looked up, panic flaring. "Evie, don't you dare." "Quiet," Evelyn hissed. "I know what I'm doing." Then the doorbell rang.
Loud.
Echoing. Followed by another round of aggressive pounding. Cass moved closer to me, instinctively pulling me into her arms. I didn't resist. Her breath brushed my neck, fast and uneven. "Jordan," she whispered, "if something happens up there, nothing's happening to anyone." I whispered back fiercely. "Not you. Not Evelyn." Her forehead pressed against mine, her trembling breath hot despite the freezing basement air. "I shouldn't have brought you here," she whispered. "I'm dragging everyone down with me." "You saved my life more times than I can count," I whispered. "Let me stay with you. Let me choose you." She flinched at the words, like no one had ever chosen her before. The pounding stopped abruptly. Silence. Then Evelyn's voice upstairs. Controlled. Cold. "Can I help you?" A man's voice followed.
Deep. Calm in a terrifying way.
"We're looking for Cassandra Blackwell." Cass stiffened violently. I grabbed her hands, grounding her. Evelyn responded, her tone icily polite. "Haven't seen her in years."
Interesting, the man said.
"Because someone saw her enter this building." Cass's nails dug into her palms. I covered her fists with mine, easing the tension. A pause. Then another man spoke. "Mind if we come in?" "Yes," Evelyn snapped instantly. My heart thudded. "Ma'am," the first man said, the calmness disappearing under a thin layer of threat. "We're not asking." Cass moved like she was about to bolt up the stairs. I pulled her back. "Cass, stop. I won't let them hurt her," she whispered. "I won't lose her again." My chest ached, not just from fear, but from the sincerity bleeding through every word. Upstairs, the floorboards creaked. Heavy steps entered the living room. Evelyn didn't resist, not yet. She stayed near the door, her voice stern. "You need a warrant."
"We don't need anything," the man said.
"Except cooperation." Cass's jaw clenched, panic carving harsh lines across her face. The footsteps grew louder. Closer. They were searching. Moving.
Determined.
Evelyn's voice rose sharply. "Stay out of my sister's room." Cass froze. Every muscle locked. My heart dropped. The men's footsteps stopped abruptly. One of them laughed softly. "Sister, huh?" Cass closed her eyes, pain rippling through her expression. Evelyn had told them without meaning to. It was too late. Cass took a step toward the stairs. I blocked her. "No," I whispered urgently. "They'll kill you." "Then what do you want me to do, Jordan?" she whispered, voice cracking. "Hide while they hurt her?" I can't do that again." "Again?" I echoed. But she didn't answer. Not yet. Upstairs, something crashed. Evelyn's voice cut through the house. "Get the hell out of my home." Then a sharp cry. Cass snapped. She lunged for the stairs. I grabbed her arm. "Cass, let go," she begged.
Begged.
"Jordan, please." Tears stung my eyes. "Cass, you can't fight them." "I can't lose her," she whispered, voice breaking entirely. I already lost one person I loved because I froze. I won't do it again. Loved? The word slammed into me, but there wasn't time to question it. Upstairs, Evelyn shouted again, this time in pain. Cass ripped her arm from my grasp and bolted up the stairs. I chased her because there was no version of reality where I let her face anything alone. Cass burst through the basement door with a speed that defied her injuries. The living room was chaos. One man had Evelyn pinned against the wall, arm across her throat. The other was rifling through drawers. Cass didn't hesitate. She grabbed the closest object, a standing lamp, and swung it. Hard. The metal cracked against the first man's shoulder. He staggered back, releasing Evelyn. Get away from her. Cass shouted, voice raw, wild, burning with something deeper than rage.
Love. Guilt. Fear.
Evelyn collapsed to the floor, coughing violently. The second man turned, rage twisting his face. He lunged at Cass. She ducked, but barely. Her ribs seized. She gasped. He reached for her. I smashed a ceramic bowl over his arm. He recoiled, snarling. Cass's eyes flew to me, full of shock and fear and something fierce. Jordan, no, but I wasn't stopping. I grabbed Cass's hand again and yanked her behind me. The first man, recovering, stepped forward. Where do you think you're going? Cass pulled me behind her so fast I nearly stumbled. She planted herself between me and the men, teeth clenched, eyes blazing with a ferocity I had never seen from her. Not at the company, not during the chase, not even when she'd been hurt. Touch her, Cass snarled, and I swear you won't live long enough to regret it. The men looked at each other, almost amused. One reached inside his coat. Cass reacted instantly. She grabbed my face and whispered, when I say run, run. Cass, run. She kicked the coffee table toward them. It crashed into their legs. Evelyn, still coughing, threw the wrench she'd been holding. It struck one man's knee. In a split second of chaos, Cass grabbed my hand and tore out the back door. We sprinted down the alley behind the townhouse, breathless, stumbling, soaked from the rain that only grew heavier. This way. Cass gasped, pulling me into a narrow gap between two buildings. We squeezed through, sliding into an overgrown courtyard hidden from the street. She pushed me against the wall gently but urgently, her body shielding mine as we both panted. She looked at me, really looked at me like she needed to memorize me in case this moment was the last. Jordan, she whispered, shaking, you shouldn't have come upstairs. I wasn't leaving you, I whispered back. Rain dripped down her cheeks like tears. Or maybe they were tears. She lifted her trembling hand and pressed it to my face. You could have died. So could you. I don't care about me, she said, voice cracking apart. I care about you. My heart stopped. Her forehead leaned against mine again, breaths tingling. Jordan, she whispered, I can't lose you. I won't survive it. My hands slid to her waist. Cass, I mean it, she whispered. You're the only person who ever looked at me like I was more than what I built. Or destroyed. Thunder cracked above us.
Cass flinched.
Then, suddenly, she kissed me.
Hard. Fierce.
Terrified. Rain soaked our hair, our clothes, our skin, but her lips were warm, burning, alive against mine. The kiss deepened instantly, all fear and desperation and longing wrapped into one impossible, breathless moment. She pressed me against the wall gently but desperately, her hands cupping my face like she needed to feel I was real. I kissed her back with everything I had, fear, relief, want, all of it. When she finally pulled back, breathless and trembling, she whispered, I choose you, even if it gets me killed. My pulse thundered. Cass, and if I lose you, she whispered, I'll never forgive myself. She was about to kiss me again when a gunshot cracked through the air. We froze. Cass's eyes widened. They found us. She grabbed my hand. Run. And we ran again. Into the dark, into the rain, into whatever came next, together. We didn't stop running until our bodies physically couldn't take another step. The rain had turned into a relentless sheet, pounding the pavement, soaking our hair, our clothes, our skin until everything clung to us like ice. Cass pulled me around another corner, her fingers locked around mine so tightly it felt like she thought I might slip away if she loosened even slightly. Her breath was ragged, each inhale a sharp, painful sound. Her ribs were worse, much worse. She winced every few steps, but she didn't slow down. Not until we reached the entrance of an old warehouse, abandoned, boarded-up windows, cracked brick exterior. Cass glanced behind us, scanning the street with panic threading through her eyes. "Inside," she whispered. "Quick." She kicked the rusted door once, twice, until the lock snapped. We slipped inside, and she forced the door shut behind us. Darkness swallowed us whole. The air was thick with dust, rust, and the faint tang of old machinery. Cass stumbled forward, bracing herself on a metal shelving unit. Her shoulders trembled. I stepped closer. "Cass," I whispered, "we need to rest." "No," she rasped. "They're close. You're in pain." "I don't care." I touched her arm gently. She jerked, not from fear but from stubbornness breaking at the edges. "Cass," I said softly, "look at me." She didn't. Not right away. Her breath shuddered. Then finally, slowly, she lifted her eyes to mine. And for the first time since the night she showed up at my apartment, she didn't look like a CEO or a strategist or a survivor. She looked like a woman on the brink of collapsing under the weight of everything she had held alone for too long. I reached up and cupped her cheek. She closed her eyes, leaning into my touch instinctively, like she'd been craving it without admitting it. "Sit," I whispered. "Please." Her resistance crumbled. She sank down onto an overturned crate and let out a soft, trembling exhale. I knelt in front of her, still holding her face, brushing my thumbs gently over her damp skin. For a moment, just a moment, the world went still. "Jordan," she whispered, voice barely audible, "I'm so scared." My heart clenched. She had never said those words. Not once. "I know," I murmured. "You don't have to pretend with me." Her hands lifted hesitantly, resting on my shoulders, fingers trembling. She looked like she wanted to speak but couldn't force the words out. So I stayed still, quiet, present, waiting. Finally, in a voice so small I almost didn't recognize it, she said, "I need to tell you something." I nodded softly. "I'm listening." She swallowed, struggling. "You asked why I fired you. Why I pushed you away. Why I acted like you were nothing when you were." Her voice broke. She closed her eyes. "You were never nothing. You were the opposite of nothing." My breath caught, but I didn't interrupt. "Jordan," she whispered, "you reminded me of her." The floor tilted beneath me. "Reminded you of who?" Slowly, painfully, Cass opened her eyes. And the grief in them was so deep it nearly knocked the breath out of me. Her name was Alina. My chest tightened, not with jealousy, but with something far heavier. Something protective. "Cass," I whispered, "you don't have to." "I do," she breathed. "Because you deserve the truth more than anyone ever has." She took a shaky breath. 7 years ago, before I became CEO, before I built my reputation, before everything, I had someone. Someone I loved. The word loved fell between us like a stone. Heavy. Real.
Raw.
She was brilliant.
Kind.
Stubborn.
She challenged me.
She made me laugh. She made me believe I wasn't as cold as people said I was. She paused, jaw trembling. And I killed her. The air left my lungs. "Cass," I whispered. "No. Not directly," she said quickly, voice shaking harder. But I froze. I hesitated. And she paid the price. Her hands tightened on my shoulders. We were leaving a restaurant late. We saw a robbery turn violent. Alina, she stepped in. She tried to talk the man down.
She was good at that.
She could calm anyone. Cass's voice broke again. He pointed his gun at her.
And I
didn't move. I didn't protect her. I didn't do anything. Tears blurred her eyes. The first ones I'd ever seen from her. He shot her. In front of me. A tear fell onto her cheek. I wiped it away with my thumb, my heart splitting open. Cass, I whispered. You were in shock. I should have done something, she choked out. Anything. But I froze. And she died. Because of me. I shook my head fiercely.
No. No, Cass.
You didn't kill her. A man with a gun did. I froze, she repeated broken. And from that moment on, I promised myself I'd never freeze again. I built myself into something unshakable. Someone who couldn't feel. Someone who couldn't love. She looked at me like she was terrified of what she'd see in my eyes. And then you showed up. The breath punched out of me. Cass, you walked into my office with your bright ideas, your confidence, your smile that made everything feel lighter. And I hated it. I hated you for making me feel anything. Her fingers curled against my shoulders. So I did what I do best. I pushed you away. I cut you out. I fired you because I was terrified of you. My hands slid to her knees, grounding her. Terrified of me? Terrified of needing you, she whispered. Terrified of caring again. Terrified of losing you the way I lost her. My heart ached. Deep, aching, overwhelming. Cass, you won't lose me. You don't know that, she whispered. Tonight, every second, I've been terrified it's happening again. That you'll die because of me. That I'll freeze again. That I'll fail again. I moved closer between her knees, taking her face in both my hands. Cass Blackwell, I whispered. It didn't freeze tonight. Her breath shook. Jordan, you fought. I continued softly. You protected Evelyn.
You protected me.
You pulled me out of danger again and again. You're not that woman from 7 years ago anymore. Tears welled in her eyes again. I don't deserve you. Maybe not, I whispered, brushing my thumb under her eye. But you have me anyway. She let out a trembling exhale, resting her forehead against mine. Jordan, her voice cracked, fragile. I'm falling for you. My breath caught.
Hard.
Cass, I didn't want to, she whispered. I fought it. God, I fought it. But I'm tired of fighting what's already true. Tears blurred my own eyes now. Her hands slid into my hair, her fingers shaking. Tell me I'm not alone in this, she breathed. Tell me you feel it too. I nodded, barely able to speak. Of course I feel it, I whispered. Cass, A sudden crash echoed outside the warehouse, loud enough to make both of us flinch. Cass's whole body tensed. She grabbed my wrist and pulled me into a crouch behind a stack of crates. Her breath steadied instantly, trained, instinctive. But her hand never left mine. Voices. Footsteps.
Slow.
Calculated. They found us, she whispered. Jordan, stay behind me. Cass. Jordan, she said again, firm and steady despite the fear I could feel trembling beneath her skin. I won't let them hurt you. She pulled me closer, our bodies pressed together behind the crates. Her breath brushed my cheek. And Jordan, yes. Whatever happens next, she whispered, what I told you is real. What I feel is real. My heart thudded painfully. I know. Footsteps drew closer. Cass squeezed my hand. Once, deeply. When I say run, she breathed, run. Cass, run toward the future, she whispered. Not away from me. And then, the footsteps stopped directly in front of the crates. Cass tensed, ready to fight, ready to protect me with her life, ready to face the past she'd run from for years. I tightened my grip on her hand. Together, I whispered. She nodded. Together. The footsteps stopped so close that I could see the shadow of the man's boots through the slit between two crates. Cass's grip on my hand tightened, her breath steadying even though I could feel the tremor running through her body. She wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for me. And somehow that terror leveled her, pulled her back into the sharp, lethal focus she'd been forcing herself to maintain all night. A low voice broke the silence. We know you're in here, Cassandra. Cass stiffened. The man spoke again, slower this time, like each word was designed to cut through the darkness and split her open. Running doesn't suit you. You were always meant for higher stages than this. Cass's nails dug into my palm. She recognized the voice. She despised the voice. Who is that? I whispered, barely moving my lips. Marcus Hale, she breathed.
Coup.
The one who orchestrated the fraud. My pulse spiked. He followed us personally? He doesn't want witnesses, she whispered. Especially me. The shadows shifted. Marcus took a few steps deeper into the warehouse, his footsteps echoing with leisurely confidence. Come out, Cassandra. I only want to talk. Cass scoffed quietly. He wants to kill me. And me. I whispered. Her jaw tightened. He'll kill anyone who knows the truth. Marcus continued. Running away with your little friend won't help either. Cass went rigid. Her hand tightened so sharply around mine, it almost hurt. He knows about me, I whispered. Of course he does, she breathed. They've been watching us. Marcus's voice sharpened, slicing through the space. You should have stayed cold, Cassandra. You were good at cold. Cold made you powerful. Cold made you predictable. He paused deliberately. But letting yourself get attached? Emotional? That was your first mistake. Cass's breath faltered.
Just barely.
And Marcus heard it. He smiled. I could hear it in his voice. She's special, isn't she? Cass's heartbeat spiked. I felt it through her hand. Marcus continued, taunting. I wonder, how far would you go for her? How much would you give up? Cass's jaw clenched hard. She was seconds away from snapping. Marcus took another step. Would you die for her? Cass moved.
Fast.
Silent.
Precise.
She shifted her weight, preparing to attack the moment he came closer, but another set of footsteps echoed on the opposite side of the warehouse. 2 men. Maybe 3. We were surrounded. Cass inhaled sharply. Jordan, she whispered. When I say run, no, Jordan. I'm not leaving you. Her breath trembled. She didn't have time to argue. The shadows shifted again, and then Marcus stopped directly in front of our hiding place. Enough games, he said. Then he kicked the crates. They exploded apart. Cass lunged instantly, grabbing me and pulling me behind her as she rose to face him, eyes blazing with lethal fury. Marcus smirked. There you are. Stay away from her, Cass snarled. Marcus lifted his brows. Oh, I don't want her. His eyes gleamed with malice. I want you. 2 large men stepped out from behind him. Cass shoved me back. Jordan, run. But the men moved too fast. One lunged at Cass. The other lunged at me. Cass threw herself toward me, intercepting the man going for me, slamming her shoulder into him with brutal force. Pain ripped across her ribs. I heard the sound she tried to swallow, but she didn't fall.
Go, she choked.
Jordan, go. I'm not leaving you, I shouted back, grabbing her arm. The second man grabbed her other arm. Cass twisted violently, trying to break free. Marcus stepped forward, smiling like a predator. You always were sentimental beneath the ice, Cassandra. Cass's eyes burned with hate. Let her go. No, Marcus said calmly. I think we'll keep her. She seems to be your flaw. Cass jerked forward violently, snarling, trying to tear out of their grip. Don't touch her. Marcus smiled coldly. So you do care. Cass lunged again, but the man behind her slammed an elbow into her ribs.
Hard.
Cass gasped, her knees buckling. My scream tore out of me. Cass. She collapsed onto one knee, one hand braced on the floor, the other pressed desperately to her side, as pain radiated through her. Marcus stepped toward her slowly, deliberately. Do you know what your biggest mistake was? He murmured. Cass lifted her head, eyes full of hatred. Thinking you could outrun us, Marcus said. Thinking you could expose me. Thinking you could play hero. He leaned down. But falling for her? That was the fatal mistake. Cass's eyes flicked to me, full of panic, full of apology, full of something so raw it made my chest ache. Don't you touch her, she whispered, voice cracking. Marcus's boot rose. I didn't think. I ran forward, slamming into him with all my weight. Marcus stumbled back in shock. You stupid. One of the men reached for me, but Cass exploded upward, tackling him with a ferocity fueled by terror and adrenaline. She slammed him into the concrete floor, choking back a scream of pain from her ribs. The second man grabbed her from behind. Cass twisted, elbowing him in the throat. He staggered, coughing. Marcus lunged toward me, fury twisting his face. You little. Cass shoved herself between us, taking the hit meant for me. Marcus backhanded her across the face. The sound cracked through the warehouse like a gunshot. Cass fell to the ground, barely catching herself. Stop, I screamed, dropping to her side. Marcus laughed. How touching. Cass coughed, blood on her lip, her breath shallow with agony. She grabbed my arm, her fingers trembling violently. Jordan, a run. No, I whispered fiercely, tears burning down my cheeks. I promised I wouldn't leave you. Marcus sighed dramatically. Enough of this.
He signaled to the men.
Finish it. The men moved in. Cass tried to stand but collapsed again, her body trembling uncontrollably. Jordan, she breathed. I'm sorry. It was the apology of someone who thought she was about to die. Something inside me snapped. I grabbed the closest object, a rusted metal pipe, and swung it as hard as I could into the knee of the nearest man. He screamed, collapsing. The second man lunged toward me. Cass, barely able to stand, threw herself forward and tackled him again. Her strength was disappearing, but her will wasn't. Don't touch her, she screamed, voice tearing from her throat. Marcus lunged toward us, and suddenly the entire warehouse flooded with blinding white light. NYD, drop your weapons. Marcus froze. The men froze. Cass collapsed fully, her body falling against mine. Police poured in from every entrance, flashlights, guns raised, voices booming commands. Marcus snarled but raised his hands. His men followed. Officers swarmed them. Read them rights. Force them to their knees. Cass trembled violently in my arms. Jordan, she whispered, voice fading. I cupped her face, pulling her closer. Cass, hey, stay with me. Her eyes fluttered. I didn't freeze this time. No, I whispered, crying. You didn't. Are you safe? Yes, I breathed. Because of you. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something else, but her eyes rolled slightly, her body swaying. Cass. I caught her before she fell, pulling her into my lap as officers rushed toward us. Ma'am, is she conscious? Cass, please stay awake, please. Her head rested weakly against my shoulder. Her breath shook. Jordan, she whispered faintly. I'm so glad you ran toward me. Her eyes closed. Her body went limp. Cass. I screamed as the officers reached us, as the danger dissipated, as the woman who had torn my life apart and then saved it collapsed in my arms, and everything inside me shattered. The world became a blur of shouting voices, flashing lights, and hands pulling Cass away from me. I refused to let go at first. My arms tightened around her unconsciously, instinctively, desperately, because letting go felt like losing her entirely. Ma'am, we need to move her, one of the paramedics said urgently. She's losing consciousness. I'm not leaving her, I choked out. My voice broke. The paramedic softened. You can stay right beside us. But we need to get her into the ambulance now. Cass's head rested against my shoulder, her breath shallow, her skin cold and damp. Jordan, she whispered, barely audible. Her fingers twitched against my shirt, a faint reminder of the way she'd held my hand all night like it was the only anchor she had. I'm here, I breathed, brushing her hair back from her forehead. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Her eyelashes fluttered weakly, her voice almost gone. Stay, always, I promised. They lifted her onto the stretcher as I clung to her hand, refusing to let even the smallest distance grow between us. The warehouse faded behind us, Marcus being shoved into a police car, Evelyn on a stretcher of her own but conscious, watching Cass with worried eyes, officers swarming everywhere, but all I saw was Cass. Cass fighting to stay awake. Cass trying to breathe through pain I could barely imagine. Cass fragile in a way I had never seen her before. I climbed into the ambulance beside her. The doors slammed shut. Sirens wailed. The city raced past us in streaks of red and blue lights. I held her hand the entire time, my thumb brushing slowly over her knuckles, whispering her name over and over like it might tether her to consciousness. Cass, can you hear me? No answer. Cass, please open your eyes. Her eyelids trembled, her breath caught, and for a moment, she managed to look at me. A small, pained smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. You're crying? Of course I'm crying, you idiot, I whispered, voice cracking. You nearly died. Cass's smile deepened for a second, soft and heartbreaking. But you're okay. Don't you dare worry about me right now. Her eyes drifted closed again. Stay, I'm here, I said, squeezing her hand. I'm not letting go. Ever. At the hospital, everything moved too fast. Nurses rushed her down a hallway. Doctors asked questions.
Papers were shoved at me.
I followed the stretcher until a nurse gently stopped me. We need to take her to imaging. You'll have to wait here for a moment. No, please, I can't just. Only a moment, she assured me. She'll be back soon. They wheeled Cass away, and for the first time since the night she knocked on my door at 4 a.m., she wasn't within reach. The emptiness hit like a physical blow. My legs gave out, and I dropped into one of the hard plastic chairs in the hallway, burying my face in my hands. I didn't realize I was sobbing until a nurse placed a cup of water beside me and squeezed my shoulder gently. She's stable, she murmured. She's fighting. She's strong. I nodded, swallowing the knot in my throat. I know. 40 agonizing minutes passed. Then Evelyn appeared, bruised but upright, supported by a nurse. Her gaze softened when she saw me. How is she? They're checking her ribs and internal bleeding, I said, wiping my face. She lost consciousness again on the way here. Evelyn exhaled shakily. She's always been strong, but she breaks quietly. That's the dangerous part. My voice wavered. She told me about Alina. Evelyn blinked, then nodded slowly. She never forgave herself. Not once. She blames herself entirely. Of course she does, Evelyn whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Because Cass would rather take every bullet in the world than let someone she loves get hurt. My heart twisted. She said she was falling for me. Evelyn looked at me for a long moment. Then she spoke softly. She didn't just fall. She crashed headfirst. Before I could respond, a doctor approached us. Family of Cassandra Blackwell? Evelyn stepped forward. I'm her sister. The doctor turned to me. And you? I swallowed. I'm with her. The doctor nodded, as if that was enough. She has multiple rib fractures, severe bruising, a mild concussion, and dangerously low blood pressure. But she's stable. She's awake. I felt my knees almost give out again. Can I see her? One at a time, the doctor said. She asked for you. My chest tightened. She asked? Yes, the doctor said with a small smile. She was very insistent. Evelyn gestured for me to go. She needs you more than she needs me right now. I nodded, heart pounding, and walked down the hallway toward her room. When I pushed the door open, the world seemed to stop. Cass lay in the bed, pale and exhausted, hooked to monitors and 4 fluids. Her hair was a messy halo on the pillow. Her lips held the faint trace of dried blood. But her eyes lit up the moment they found mine. Jordan, her voice was soft, fragile, beautiful. I rushed to her side, taking her hand gently. Hey, I whispered, trying not to cry again. Hey, you're awake. She smiled weakly. You stayed. I told you I would. Her fingers curled around mine slowly. Everything hurts. I know, I whispered. You scared me. Her eyes softened. I scared myself. I brushed hair from her forehead gently. She winced at the touch, but leaned into it anyway. Cass, I whispered, why didn't you let them take care of you before? Why did you keep pushing yourself? She looked down at our linked hands. Because I needed to get you out. Alive. Cass, her voice trembled as she whispered, I can't lose you. Not like Alina. Not like anyone. Not again. Tears stung my eyes. You won't. She looked up at me again, eyes glassy and vulnerable. Jordan, tell me you're here. Tell me you're not leaving. I'm here, I whispered. I'm not leaving. Her lower lip trembled. Even after what I did to you? Firing you? Hurting you? Cass, we'll talk about all of that. But right now, the only thing that matters is that you're alive. Her breath caught, shaky and aching. Jordan, yes? I don't deserve you. I leaned closer. Maybe not, but you have me anyway. She let out a small, broken sound, half laugh, half sob. Come here, she whispered. I leaned in gently, mindful of her injuries. She lifted her hand with effort, touching my cheek softly. I need you, she whispered, and it terrifies me. I know, I whispered, but you're not alone anymore. She inhaled shakily, eyes searching mine. Do you feel the same? I didn't hesitate. Of course I do. Her eyes fluttered closed in relief, like my words were the only medicine she needed. I bent and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, lingering, feeling her exhale beneath me. She whispered, voice barely audible, stay with me tonight. Always, I murmured, brushing my thumb over her hand. Her eyes drifted open again, full of something warm, tender, breathtakingly real. Jordan, yes? Ask me again tomorrow, she whispered, when I'm not drugged and half dying. Ask what? Her lips curved faintly. Ask me what we are. My heart flipped. I will, I whispered, and we'll figure it out together. Cass squeezed my hand weakly. Tomorrow, she breathed. Tomorrow, I promised. And I stayed beside her bed, holding her hand as the storm outside finally began to fade. Morning filtered into the hospital room in thin, pale streaks, turning the walls a soft gold. I hadn't slept. Not really. My head had nodded forward a few times, my hand still wrapped around Cass's, but every time she shifted or breathed differently, my eyes opened instantly. I stayed, just like I promised. And she never let go of my hand, even while unconscious. When she finally stirred, it was almost delicate. A faint sound left her throat. Her fingers tightened around mine. Her eyelashes fluttered open slowly, and when she saw me sitting there beside her bed, she exhaled softly, like she had been holding her breath even while asleep. Jordan, she whispered. Her voice was raspy, but steady.
Alive.
I leaned closer, brushing my thumb gently across her knuckles. Good morning, I murmured. How do you feel? She gave me a weak but genuine smile, like I got hit by a truck. Twice. That's pretty accurate. Did you sleep? No, you stayed. Of course. She looked at me then, really looked, and her eyes softened in a way I had never seen from her in all the time I'd known her. Night had stripped her defenses. Morning made her honesty shine. Jordan, she whispered, I remember everything from last night. Every word, every choice, every feeling. My heart thudded once hard. She shifted slightly, wincing but determined, and lifted her hand to rest it weakly against my cheek. And I meant all of it. I leaned into her touch, breathing her in carefully, not wanting to put pressure on her injuries. Cass, no, she whispered softly. Let me say it while I still have the courage. Her thumb brushed my cheek slowly. Last night you asked what we were. My breath caught. I didn't ask yet. But you wanted to, she murmured. I could see it in your eyes. Silence settled between us, gentle, expectant, charged. Cass swallowed, her voice trembling with sincerity instead of fear this time. Jordan, I want us. I want you. I want whatever this is, whatever we can be, whatever the future looks like if you're in it. My chest tightened, painfully, beautifully. She continued, her eyes glistening. I know I hurt you. I know I pushed you away. I know I made choices out of fear instead of love. But I'm done running. From you. From myself. From what I feel. My eyes stung. Cass, let me finish, she whispered, her grip on my face soft but firm. I love you. I'm in love with you. My breath shattered. No hesitation. No fear. No armor. Just truth. Cass, her voice cracked. I thought I killed the part of myself capable of loving someone. But you, God, Jordan, you brought it back. You made me feel again. You made me fight again. You made me want to live. Tears finally spilled down my cheeks. She gently wiped one with her thumb. So, if you want me, if you want us, I swear I'll spend the rest of my life making up for the pain I caused you. I leaned forward until our foreheads touched, our breath mingling softly. Cass, I whispered, my voice trembling with everything I couldn't hold back anymore. I love you too. Her breath hitched. You do? How could I not? I whispered. After everything we went through? After everything you revealed? After the way you protected me, trusted me, let me see you? Tears filled her eyes, the overwhelming kind she tried to blink away unsuccessfully. Jordan, I pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, careful not to bump the bruises. I love you, I whispered again, letting the truth settle between us, warm and certain. Her hand slid weakly into my hair as she pulled me closer until our lips met, slowly, gently, deeply. This kiss wasn't fear. It wasn't adrenaline. It wasn't danger. It was a beginning, a promise, a future. When we finally pulled apart, Cass breathed out a soft, shaky laugh. I didn't think I would get this far. You almost didn't, I said, brushing her cheek. So, don't scare me like that again. Her smile softened. I'll try not to. A knock sounded at the door. Evelyn peeked in, bruised but standing tall. She took one look at us, foreheads touching, hands entwined, and her entire expression softened into something warm, knowing, relieved. Good, Evelyn said. About time something in your life made sense. Cass rolled her eyes affectionately. Thanks, Evie. Evelyn stepped inside, placing a folder on the bedside table. Detectives want statements later. But first, she looked at Cass. They found everything. The fraud, the transfers, the falsified reports. Marcus and the board members are done. Cass exhaled, a tremor of relief shaking her. It's over? It's over, Evelyn said firmly. You're safe now. Cass's grip on my hand tightened, grounding herself with the contact. We're safe, she corrected softly. Evelyn smirked.
Yes, we.
Then she stepped out, closing the door gently behind her. Cass looked at me again, more vulnerable, more open, more hers than ever. Jordan, she whispered, I don't want this to end when we leave the hospital. It won't. Promise. Promise. She reached out, and I climbed carefully onto the edge of the bed, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. She rested her head against me with a soft sigh, her body finally relaxing. Hours passed like that. Quiet. Safe.
Ours.
Later, after the doctors returned, after the paperwork was signed, after Evelyn had gone home to rest, I helped Cass into a wheelchair. We left the hospital together, moving slowly beneath a sky finally clearing from the storm. Cass looked up at it, then at me. Her voice was soft. You know, the night you opened the door at 4 a.m., I thought I was walking into the end of my life. I squeezed her hand. And now? She smiled, gentle, real, breathtaking. Now it feels like the beginning. Of what? Of us, she whispered. If you'll have me. I leaned down and kissed her, still careful, still gentle, still full of everything I felt. Cass Blackwell, I murmured against her lips. I want all of it. The beginning, the middle, the end. With you. Her eyes shone. Then come home with me? Home. I echoed softly. She grabbed my hand again, steady now.
Certain. Safe.
Home, she repeated. Wherever you are. I smiled. Then let's go. And as we stepped out into the new morning, hand in hand, hearts finally aligned, the storm behind us and the future open wide, Cass whispered, I'm still terrified. Of what? I asked, squeezing her hand. She smiled again. Of how much I love you. I leaned into her shoulder. Good, I whispered. because I love you just as much. And together, we walked toward everything waiting for us. If you enjoyed this content and want to support the channel in a special way, try clicking the thanks button below. It's the one with the heart and $sign icon. With super thanks, you can make a direct contribution to the channel, which helps me keep creating awesome videos for you.